Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we are specifically going to talk about why Shadowdark RPG is the most important product for the OSR in 2023, and why it is now, in my humble opinion, 100% the premier product of the OSR, and why it is now inheriting every single major promise the OSR made in January 2023, and why Shadowdark RPG is the most important non-D&D product to Dungeons & Dragons in 2023. All right, so what I'm saying in this video is that Shadowdark RPG, which is currently in Kickstarter, okay, and actually currently exists in the real world. There's printed copies of it. You can actually there are some people in the world who could already play Shadowdark RPG. To my knowledge, Runehammer Games literally put the book on the shelf and was like, has a hardback book and can run Shadowdark RPG right now. So it is existent to a select group of people, but it is an incoming product from the OSR this year. And in my opinion, it is the premier product of the OSR and owns the resolution of every single promise that the OSR community made in 2023, which was a significant number of highly significant promises. And that there is a weight, and it is going to be a weight that strengthens and bolsters Shadowdark RPG or cracks it in half, in my opinion, right? That shatters it under the weight of what's happening with the OSR right now. So yeah, let's get into it. I think this is it's pretty fascinating. So where do we land with Shadowdark, and why is it the premier product of the OSR? So basically, we have this special thing that happened in January 2023. Some refer to it as the 2023 OGL crisis. I refer to it as the 2023 Manic Panic. And D&D Begone was shouted by, in my humble opinion, 51% of the OSR. So the majority of the OSR, and that means to me, the OSR owns those words. They own D&D Begone. They own a promise to end D&D, to end Dungeons & Dragons, a promise that literally echoes the same words as the 1983 American Evangelical Christians, right? And in addition to that, when you say D&D be gone, right, you're not only are you saying we want this thing gone, but you're also saying we can replace it. And it was a promise to end D&D and a promise to replace D&D. What's more than that is the OSRs, people from the OSR, Pathfinder mostly, in my opinion. And okay, you're saying, Scott, Pathfinder's OSR? All right, wake up. Okay, Pathfinder is literally a copy of 3.5, which is a 2-decade-old game, and Pathfinder 2 is nothing but a bad copy of Pathfinder 1, right? OSR old school is literally saying nothing new. We're old school, right? We don't want anything new, right? And so basically, Pathfinder has been dedicated to that, right? They copied 3.5, made Dungeons & Dragons 3.75, what many people call D&D 3.75, and used that for a decade. And then when they were like, we need new money, that's, in my humble opinion, there's no other reason for Pathfinder 2e. They were like, I do think it was a commercially driven edition. They copied Pathfinder 1 and threw in a little bit better action economy. Who cares, right? But Pathfinder is genuinely the number one threat to Dungeons & Dragons in the world, and it carries the OSR energy, right? The problem is, we went through the 2023 OGL crisis, and we came out the other end, right? And the OSR, actually, what the OSR was given, and they never asked for it, was the D&D SRD under Creative Commons, and frankly, in my humble opinion, the full-on death of the OGL. So their entire purpose was to preserve the OGL. I think Pathfinder effectively, in my humble opinion, killed the OGL and made sure that the D&D SRD came out under Creative Commons, which they counted as a win. I don't think it's a win. I don't think they even know what happened, right? I don't think Pathfinder really even know, the Pathfinder community. And in my humble opinion, I think 51% of the Pathfinder community engaged in D&D Begone shouting, right? And so that means they are really the banner carriers for this, in my humble opinion, right? So basically, there's a plain narrative, there's a meta narrative, and there's an assigned narrative. And here's where we land, okay? The plain narrative is Kelsey Dion from Arcane Library is like, I want to make a good game. I want to make an OSR game. And she said, I want to make a good game. And then she said to everybody, hey, because I want this to sell, I need to attach it to a community. This is an OSR game. Okay? The moment she did that, right, she made Shadowdark RPG a frontline element in the cultural skirmish, the commercial skirmish between the OSR and D&D, right? And I don't think for a minute that Kelsey Dion wanted Shadowdark RPG to be a frontline element in the cultural skirmish between D&D and OSR, and between the commercial skirmish between the D&D between D&D and the OSR, right? And I think where we used to be is we used to believe there was this possibility of a kumbaya garden. You play what you want, we play what we want. Now we're in contested ground. There is a contest to win players and dungeon masters for OSR or for D&D, and it is full-on cultural skirmish, full-on commercial skirmish, right? And the OSR needs to put up frontline elements, right, so that they can win contested ground, right? And so Kelsey Dion had no intention of making Shadowdark RPG the frontline element in the D&D OSR cultural skirmish, commercial skirmish, but it is. And you know who's making it that way? Professor Dungeon Master, Ben from Questing Beast, Aaron Pedantic, right? Nerd Immersion, and essentially OSR allies to the OSR champions and OSR allies, Runehammer to the last, right? And they're saying it really doesn't matter what Kelsey Dion wants. We need a frontline element. And guess what? We can't use Pathfinder, and we also now know they can't use Black Flag, right? Because Black Flag's already done its playtest, and Black Flag was like, oh, did you guys think we were going to build something exciting? No, we're just going to take D&D, pour it into a new cup, and present it as Project Black Flag. And everybody's like, are you serious? Is that what you're trying to do? And they're like, yeah, that's what we were intending to do. They're like, that's not going to win anything, right? So now the OSR is doing a full court press to put Shadowdark RPG up, right? And the reason why is none of the old losers can really do anything. We can't really put the OSR losers in place, right? OSC is never going to replace D&D. DCC is never going to replace D&D. Pathfinder is never going to replace D&D. We know these because because Dungeons & Dragons has already put every single one of them in the dirt, right? Like, I mean in the dirt, right? Like, just savaged them, right? Like, in the cultural skirmish, and the commercial skirmish, cultural and commercial skirmish between the D&D and the OSR. D&D has savagely defeated every single one of these guys, and there's nothing. There's nothing to be done for the OSR no one has a hope that these things are going to win, but there's this shining hope that Shadowdark RPG can win, right? Now I think it's going to fail. I think it's absolutely going to fail, right? But what I think is important is that from now on, and here's this here. So Kelsey Dion, plain narrative, good game. It's an OSR game, right? Meta narrative. You have, I think, Aaron Pedantic, Professor Dungeon Master, Runehammer Games, Ben from Questing Beast, Bob World Builder, Nerd Immersion, all coming out to support this and surge it forward, right? And saying this is the frontline element. This is the premier OSR product that is intended to replace and fully defeat D&D. Assigned narrative, me, Scott Garibay, right? I've had to watch for a decade now the OSR complain about every D&D canon hardback. And the reason why is every D&D canon hardback is the premier D&D product, saying we will keep you in the dirt. We will own 70 to 80% and dominate not just our main competitor games. We will dominate the entire industry. We are the Disney of tabletop role-playing games, right? And what I'm saying is I am going to watch for these premier OSR products, right? Each one that is attempting to fulfill the 2023 promise of replacing D&D. And I'm going to watch them and I'm going to review them as the premier attempt of the OSR to replace D&D. And I'm going to say, did it do it or not? The same way OSR comes and complains about every single D&D canon hardback. The only thing difference is I'm going to try to make it engaging and thoughtful for you. Every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing and have a wonderful millennium.